Hey you guys, it's Peter, and welcome to my channel, Peterisms, where I tell stories of my life and just little things that I have learned as I have grown into the person that I am today. Happy Friday. I thought that I would break out the meditation books yet again and start off this weekend with a firm foundation of some balance and serenity and some peace in our life. So I wanted to see what the meditation books and the universe had to say to us today. I haven't looked in them yet, so I have no idea what the meditations are about today. But I'm going to look at both of the books and see what they have to say to us. So the language of letting go for September 12th, let's see what it says. September 12th is about healing. Rather vague. It's kind of a short meditation today. So let's keep that one kind of open, and then let's look at Melody Beatty's Journey to the Heart. I actually have the last couple days in here, so I can pick from any from the last couple days. But today's is about energize yourself. Oh, that might be a good one for the weekend. As far as like, well, I don't know. Maybe energize would be a better one for Monday, right? Yesterday's was heal your fear of abandonment. Let's read the one from the day before. Laugh often. Take time to be pleased. Let your creativity blossom. Imagine all the possibilities. I like the sound of that one. Imagine all the possibilities. This is from September 6th. Did I read this one already? I don't think I did, but I guess I might know once I get into it. So let's start reading this one. I don't think I am looking at it. I don't think I have, but let's read the meditation. Imagine all the possibilities. September 6th, imagine all the possibilities. Think of all the possibilities for your life, for love, for work, for growth. Think of all the possibilities for adventure, for fun, and for service. This day, this week, this month, this year abounds with possibilities. Each task you have to do, each problem you encounter and need to solve abounds with possibilities. Your life abounds with possibilities. For a long time, we only saw some of the possibilities life held. We look at a situation and see the possibilities for guilt, victimization, sadness, and despair. We tell ourselves there was only one choice or no choice, or that something had to be done in a particular way, the hardest and dreariest way possible. We neglect to envision the other options, the choices for joy, for making any event more fun, more pleasant, more enjoyable. You don't need to limit yourself anymore. You've opened your heart. Now open your mind. Look around. See all the possibilities. The universe is teeming with them. It will lead and guide you into this abundance if you ask it for help and then allow that to happen. Open to life's abundance. Open to all its possibilities. The more open you become, the more creative you'll be in work, in play, in love, in life. The more creative you are, the more possibilities you'll see. I love this meditation so much. And you know, in my head, as I'm reading these, I'm thinking of things. One of the reasons why I love it is I keep on seeing this thing come up on Instagram. So I follow a lot of like the positivity quote Instagram accounts, and you know the spirituality guru Instagram. I follow a lot of those just for like the memes, the little positive quotes. And one of them that I really like that it comes up in some shape or form very often for me is, you know, like, just what if things actually worked out like in your favor, or if things worked out the way that you want them to, or the way that you hope that they would. And I think the reason why that, I don't really know how it's said exactly, but why that meditation or that little meme or quote resonates with me is, I think the majority of my life, I would say until the last couple years, I really spent looking at as the glass half empty, you know, as like always like the worst scenario that's going to happen. And I think that was kind of a preparedness that I did. You know, yesterday I talked a lot about growing up and fear and anxiety and all that kind of stuff. And I think that response was kind of a trauma response maybe to, or a fear response to what's going to happen next. And I don't know what's going to happen next. And so if I could always prepare myself for every outcome, every worst case scenario outcome, then I felt prepared. And I think that sometimes, like, I really believe a lot of my like OCD tendencies came from that as well. My rituals came from this need to this constant control of every fear outcome that could happen. And so my brain was very much, you know, it was organized to think of the worst case scenario possible instead of thinking about the best case scenario possible. And, you know, I think that that's something that I lived with for the majority of my life. In the last couple years, and honestly, having social anxiety has really, really helped me a lot with this, because getting through and working through my social anxiety has almost kind of forced me to live in this stance where that's not a healthy place for me to live, or I just don't go do anything. Because back in the day, if we had any kind of social engagement or social thing that we were going to go do, in my head, I would talk myself out of it a million different ways. I would say, well, this is going to happen, or this is going to be horrible, or I don't want to, you know, run into these people, or I feel like I don't look good, or I'm not confident. And I would talk myself out of it. And then for a very long time, I just didn't go to those things. And I've shared a lot of my stories about working through my social anxiety on here and on my other channels as well. It was actually a Halloween party years ago that my friend hosts every year. She and her husband host. Well, she hosted it long before they got married and together, but they still do it. And I finally, that year I went, and, you know, I had talked to her about my social anxiety in a way that I never had before. I opened up and allowed a friend to be present for me, and which I think is something that we need to do in life. We need to sometimes let the people in our life know where we're at, so if they can help us, if they're, you know, willing to. And a lot more people are willing to help us than we know, you know, emotionally, not just helping us, like, you know, move furniture or whatever, but help us emotionally as well. And I remember I talked to her about my social anxiety, and she understood it. She knew people that had it. And she said, well, I would really like you to come to the Halloween party. But if you don't, I will totally understand. But if you do and you want to come, what could I do that would make that process easier for you? And I kind of thought through it, and I said, you know, if I was one of the first people, I think maybe she suggested, I don't even remember. It's been so long now, but I said, maybe if I was one of the first people that showed up, and then I could just, like, you know, then when everybody, because for me, when I walk into a large group, that's more overwhelming for me than it is to, like, be there and have people show up. Does that make sense? Like, it's easier for me, like, okay, we went to this wedding well, my husband went first because he got ready with his friends at the wedding. And so I showed up, and when I got there, I made sure I showed up, like, so the guests started to arrive at 5, and the wedding started at 5:30. I showed up there at 5, and I was, like, one of the very last few people to show up. And, like, everybody was standing out there, you know, they already had their, like, you know, cocktails from before the wedding, and I had to walk into this large group. And today, it's not as, I mean, I can remember back in the day, I would have been so filled with fear that I wouldn't have wanted to get out of the car. I wouldn't have wanted, you know, but I didn't feel that way, but there's a lot of work that has to go into it. And so I can remember she said that to me, like, what makes it easier for you? And I said, well, if I could show up there first. And so I did. And I remember standing in her kitchen, and I had my back up against the sink, and people would come in and they go, oh, hi, Peter, it's good to see you. Or, oh, I don't know you. My name's so-and-so. And they'd come to me. And that made it so much more comfortable. And over the course of the next couple hours, I felt a lot better, right? Like, I really enjoyed my time there. I enjoyed the food. I went outside. I didn't just stand up against the sink the whole night. I walked around. And I remember when we left, I saw people there that I used to work with back in the day that I hadn't seen in years. And I just had such a great time. And I can remember on the way home, I was so excited about it. We stayed until, like, almost the very end. And Alex was excited for me. And I said, I'm so excited about doing the next thing. Well, the next thing came up, and I was just as scared, right? Today, like, the scene, and I think that fear in my head was always the glass is half empty. Like, what's the worst thing that's going to happen? And then I kind of lived in that. Like, imagining the Halloween party and running into somebody that I don't want to run into, or, you know, being in a room of people that I don't know. Like, that's very scary for me. It's like I don't have one person I can look to. Like, I mean, whenever still till I go to something today, I was actually telling, so one of Alex's really good friends, her fiance I know really well. And so when I, like, whenever, and he's sober too. And so whenever I go to something, I was kind of like, and I told him, I was like, oh, I was looking for you when I stepped out of the car. And so I have safety people there and stuff like that. It's not as bad today as it was, but one of the things that I do today, like when I was getting ready for the wedding on Saturday, is I, like, listen to music, and I kind of imagine myself, and I just think about, like, I'm going to have such a good time. Like, this is going to be so much fun that when I leave, I'm going to look back and be like, I'm really grateful I went. And so I've programmed myself to imagine, kind of like the memes that I've read on Instagram, just imagine if everything turned out really good, instead of imagining that everything's going to turn out really bad. And I do that for family get-togethers. I do that for social events that I have to get. I mean, anything in my life. I try to look at the best case scenario not just the worst case scenario, because for years and years and years, I looked at the worst case scenario, and it really, like, not only, and 90% of the time, my old sponsor used to say to me, that since passed away, he goes, 90% of the time, the things you worry about the most never even happen, which was so proven to me time and time again, that I would worry and just borrow trouble over stuff that never even happened, never came to fruition. But I would waste time and energy just in my head spinning, scripting conversations, scripting like excuses to have to leave things, and it never even happened. Like, I've told so many people, like, there's probably 10 years of my life that I lived with my OCD and social anxiety being at like 100 out of 100, like on a daily basis, that I don't even think people really knew how much in my head I had to talk myself out of stuff and talk myself into stuff. Today, it's not like that, because I've done so much work on it, and I've really worked on it, and I want to, like, the next meditation I'm going to read is about healing. I really want to heal, and I really want to grow, because I want to enjoy my life today. So, like, on Saturday, I was excited to go to the wedding. Yes, when I stepped out of the car, I still had a little fear inside of me. I probably always will. That will probably never go away. I'll probably always have reminders of walking into a new school classroom when I was in first grade and what that was like, and people laughing. I'll probably always have memories of that. When we go through trauma, we're going to carry, to some degree, those scars and wounds with us for the rest of our life. But I don't have to live in that moment of people laughing at me in first grade for the rest of my life. I have the right to enjoy my life today. I have that right. And so I try to best case scenario it too. And like getting ready for the wedding on Saturday, I was so excited about it. I was like, this is going to be so much fun. The food's going to be good. I'm going to see people we're sitting at a table with all of his friends that I know. It's going to be really fun. It's going to be, it's a wedding, it's celebration, And I went, and I had a really great time, And so today, I think it's a lot about my attitude. What's that, the old school poster we would have where it says that life is 10% of what happens to us and 90% our attitude about it? I believe that. I really do believe that. And I believe that 90% of the time, I allowed 90% of my day to be affected by my attitude of going into certain things. And not that I was in the wrong for it. And I think we see things in right and wrongs. That was my response to growing up in fear. That was my response to growing up in situations where I didn't know what the outcome was going to be next, So that was a really great meditation. I loved that, seeing things from different perspectives. All right, let's read this very short meditation called Healing from September 12th today. This is a quote from Joshua Loth Liebman. We should learn not to grow impatient with the slow healing process of time. We should discipline ourselves to recognize that there are many steps to be taken along the highway leading from sorrow to renewed serenity. We should anticipate these stages in our emotional convalescence. Unbearable pain, poignant grief, empty days, resistance to consolation, disinterestedness in life, gradually giving way to the new weaving of a pattern of action and the acceptance of the irresistible change of life. Oh, I really like that. Because what it's saying is that healing and growth, first of all, is not linear. And number two, that there's a lot of pain that happens in the healing process as well. Recovery is a process. It is a gradual process, a healing process, and a spiritual process. A journey rather than a destination. Just as codependency takes on a life of its own and is progressive, so recovery progresses. One thing leads to another, and things, as well as us, get better. We can relax, do our part, and let the rest happen. Today, I will trust this process and this journey that I have undertaken. What I really like about that is that it's a reminder, like I was saying before, that, like I said, I'm probably always, it's interesting to me when people will say things like, well, you just need to get over this or whatever. But then we also talk about like fundamental years, or like the first 7 years of your life. And a lot of the traumatic experience that I experienced in my life happened within the first 7 years of my life. So that's my foundation for going through life. Like I said, I do not want to live in the moment of standing in a classroom and having kids laugh at me for the rest of my life. But the reality is that that's always going to be somewhere in my mind. I have ways to work through that today. Healing is about revisiting pain, working through pain, and getting to the other side. But like we say in recovery, we don't close the door on the past, nor do we forget it. It's going to be there with me. I don't have to live in there. I can respect it. I can respect it as being this moment in time that I have now, that I lived through, that I survived, and I have made it to the other side, and I have learned something great from it. That's what I've learned to do today, is to respect those things that happen. Not to like them, not to love it, not to be happy that I went through it, but to respect it. To respect the fact that through living, to respect myself, that having lived through that, I learned a great lesson today. But sometimes healing is not joyous and celebration. Sometimes it's painful. It hurts. It hurts to go through and look at all the things that we've gone through in our life, our own wrongdoings, the things we need to take accountability for, the mistakes we've made, the hurt we've caused in other people. You know, that's a huge part of the 12-step program, is taking a look at people you've harmed, looking them in the eye and making direct amends. That's not easy. It's painful to do. You know, but then it's like you never have to look behind you again and be like, well, you know, and so that's all part of it. But it's also painful to look at the pain that other people instilled on you. And I think part of it is us trying to understand why we were the ones that got that, or what did we do to deserve that, or why were we chosen, or why were we picked. And we may never know. But what we can know is, who are we today and what have we learned by having survived, not just lived through, but survive that experience. And that's why I'm such a big believer in turning our wounds into wisdom. And what that means is, once you have survived that experience and you're on the other side, sharing your story with other people to maybe help somebody that's going through that today. And that's being of service. So these are 2 really great meditations. Let me know what you think in the comment section below. I love you guys, and I will see you tomorrow. Bye.